Fury, awe-inspiring and terrifying.
2 nuclear power plants. This is scary. They are in the direct path of this massive storm.
Buildings, homes, hotels wiped away. And there are new images emerging tonight from the British Virgin Islands. They are stunning. Irma has left a trail of devastation there. Nothing left of the homes on this hillside.
Even homes built to national standards can come apart in just 100-mile-per-hour winds.
Local officials are asking people to gather supplies for at least 7 days and be prepared to go without power.
9 million people may lose power.
The Virgin Islands laid to waste and now dealing with serious flooding. In St. Martin, cars strewn about like toys, trees stripped bare of their leaves. French and Dutch military part of an international aid operation. Turks and Caicos, St. Bart's and St. John, the picture's almost apocalyptic. At least 21 now dead, among them a 2-year-old boy swept away by waters in Barbuda, where a shocking 95% of homes no longer stand.
For those waiting, the fear is real.
This is huge. It's really huge. And these surges by the beach, the water's going to come up really high. You get trapped in your homes. It's really scary.
Images from the Caribbean in the wake of Irma tell a story of paradise lost. Islands like Barbuda and St. Martin are decimated.
University of Maryland wind tunnel researchers recreate hurricane-force winds. This is now a Category 1 storm, 80 miles per hour. We're looking at some damage to unanchored mobile homes, trees, and shrubs. This is now a Category 2 storm, 100-mile-per-hour winds. There is no way you could stand in this. Significant damage to roofs, to windows. This is now a Category 3, 115 miles per hour. The wind is pulling my cheeks and my skin back. Anything that isn't tied down would be uprooted and torn from its foundation. After just a few minutes in Cat 3 winds last year, the engineers said enough.
It's just absolutely exhausting to stand in those kinds of winds.
Overnight, the major hurricane battering Turks and Caicos on its march toward the U.S. mainland.
I'm scared as hell about my house.
It's a race against time now in South Florida and beyond.
I get the feeling this is the way it's going to be.
With hundreds of thousands of residents ordered out.
There is a very different mood in South Florida around this storm. In previous storms, there'd be some braggadocio about sticking it out, riding it out. There is a real palpable fear here when you talk to people. People who haven't left in previous storms are leaving this time around. There is a fear because of what people have seen already from this storm. A death toll that right now stands at 23 but continues to rise throughout the day, and the utter destruction it has already caused in the Caribbean, making some islands uninhabitable. So people are afraid if this storm does indeed hit South Florida as a Category 4. They know what that means here. They've been through it in the past. It could mean down tree lines, down power lines, roofs ripped off of houses, exterior walls ripped off. So we're already seeing people go into shelters at this early time. People are taking this seriously, and they are afraid, John.
It is so quiet behind you. The people who have been told to evacuate, have they already gotten out of town?
We've seen entire neighborhoods just turn into ghost towns within the last 24 hours. We could see an evacuation of more than 1.2 million people. And that evacuation, the window to get out, is narrowing each hour.
What many thought was a miss now has models shifting this way.
We're not as far away from the center as we had originally thought.
Grace and Frank Mazzarella scrambling to finish storm preps on Sanibel Island.
My family wants us out of Florida totally, but that's a little bit difficult to do right now with traffic. Airlines are all booked up.
Officials going door to door to make sure residents, especially the most vulnerable, weren't lulled into a sense of security.
I'm just thinking about my family, my wife and puppy.
The biggest issue here may be the storm surge, a wall of water coming ashore, leaving all of these low-lying homes underwater.
Search and rescue teams are ready for anyone who doesn't get out in time.
Pretty much anything that's going to help us gain access to something or someone is on this vehicle.
Route 75, the major highway on Florida's west coast, is backed up for miles. Gas supplies are dwindling. Some places are running out of sandbags. The Velos family from Port Charlotte is evacuating, but couldn't find a place to go.
All the hotels in Gainesville, Ocala, and Lake City, all of them were booked. So there was not a room available, so we had to sleep at a rest area with our kids.
While others can only hope they didn't wait too long.
By the grace of God, we'll survive again.
Almost 2 million people call Southwest Florida home. When you add in tourists, that number goes way up. Where we are, the storm surge could get up to 12 feet, and Lester, that water could go way inland.
Of course, there are also the millions of people, families who will ride out what could be a Category 5 hurricane in their homes and apartment buildings. A lot of concern here about rooftops, windows, exterior walls. Will they hold in a Cat 5 storm? Let alone all the cranes you see here on the Miami skyline. With so much new construction, what will happen to them? ABC's chief national correspondent Tom Yamas on Miami Beach tonight.
In South Florida, time is running out. Long lines of shoppers in desperate need for supplies before the monster storm hits. In southwest Miami-Dade, Annie Meserhain is testing her generator. Fears about the gas shortage and a long drive to safety with her 7-month-old kept her in Miami.
What's your biggest concern?
I think just more than anything after is, are we going to be able to get the water? Are we going to be able to get food? I've got milk for the baby, all those things. That's much more of my concern.
I think it's going to be worse than Andrew.
Hurricane Irma forcing some to go to extremes. Arnaldo Ricciuli putting metal shutters over his storm-proof windows. He's staying to protect his home, but his family wants to evacuate.
What's making you want to leave, possibly leave your dad behind?
Well, because of the storm surge, I'm trying to actually not leave him, trying to bring him with me.
In downtown Miami, officials are worried about 20 to 25 construction cranes. Experts tell us in hurricanes, cranes are designed to spin like weather vanes to avoid toppling over.
Hurricane Irma is putting the Orlando area on alert as thousands arrive seeking refuge from South Florida.
Brian Yennis, he's live in Miami tonight. Really, we're talking about right at the heart of where we expect this is going to hit. That along with the southwestern coast, Naples, Fort Myers, and of course the eastern side of Florida, and the whole state, of course, will be engulfed by this. What's going on there, Brian?
Hi, Sean. Well, look, right behind me is the port of Miami completely closed off. This is the largest passenger port in the entire world, really, and there it is, just completely shut down. If you come to look at me over here on this side, we'll start seeing some of the boats here. The big concern, storm surge. This is Bayside. This is an area that normally on a Friday night would be packed with people. Those boats there bringing people towards some of the largest homes and most expensive properties. They are tied and double tied, but we are expecting anywhere from 3 to 6 foot, if not more, depending on the full track of this storm, of water to maybe just really breach this wall. And if you can look at the shops there, the Bayside shopping, there's the police tape. Nothing's boarded up. Nothing's boarded up. And if you look over here behind me, maybe we can get a shot of the condo buildings. This is a mandatory evacuation zone. 660,000 people evacuated in Miami-Dade County, the largest in its history. There are still people in those condos. They still have some time to leave, but that window is really short because come tomorrow, once those tropical storm winds start hitting at 35 miles an hour plus, no rescue crews will be on the roads, and that is why the governor, Rick Scott, is asking people to make the decision tonight to get to where you need to be, and it better not be at a hotel because they're likely booked unless you have a reservation. So either find yourself in a shelter or make those preparations now. Look, at 155 miles an hour, you're talking 20, 30, 40 stories above the ground. That's just infinitely worse up there. It's more than that, the gusts, and so they don't want you there at all. And so that's the message here, to get people out as quickly as they can. A lot of comparison here, Sean, to Hurricane Andrew. This is going to be bigger and larger, not only because of the size, but remember, Hurricane Andrew, when it made landfall, was in Homestead, Florida. That was not downtown Miami in terms of the full throttle of that storm. That was only 30 miles, 30 miles wide was that eye where it was fully destructive. We're talking a lot larger space here. This is the first time this city down here is going to face this type of storm. And so they're urging people to leave. That water expected fully to come at least through here, for sure.
Hey, Brian, I hope these people will heed that warning. We're looking at the lights on behind you. Are you certain people are still in there, or maybe some just left the lights on?
I can't say for sure because I didn't go in that building, but I can tell you that the hotel we're staying at, which is down the block here, that hotel is still down on the other side of the island there. Just as threatened by water, it's still fully functional and open. We've spoke to people at the supermarket, at the Publix, that closed at 8 p.m. No more food for people. People said they were staying. Some people that were in evacuation zones. Others were leaving. A little bit of a mixed bag inside that supermarket. So while I can't say for sure that it's 100% not full, I mean, given what we've seen today, we've seen that people are really set on staying. We haven't really had that storm. I grew up down here, and everyone said that storm is coming, and it never really hit that hard except for Wilma, and I went through that, and that was Category 3. This is something we've never experienced before, and so there's a lot of people new to Florida here. So that is why I think we're hearing the governor and other state officials really plead with people to listen. And you got some people that are Miami-Dade for life, and they just say they're going to stay in their homes because they've ridden everything, including Andrew, but we'll see, Sean.
All right, thanks so much, Brian. I know there are weather warriors out there. I know that they think they can ride this out. Listen, from the bottom of my heart, I urge you, don't worry about the property. Make sure you protect your lives and your family, please.
At least 10 people are reported to have died in its path, and now the Category 5 storm is headed west towards Florida.
To Hurricane Irma, you've heard this already, could be the costliest, but also the most damaging in U.S. history.
We are dealing with this hurricane that is unprecedented in a lot of areas, and even if it gets downgraded to a Category 4, it's still going to have the potential to bring devastating storm surge, devastating flooding, and very, very strong winds that could knock down buildings in South Florida.
Police officers, firefighters, and ambulances will not come to help you when the winds get too intense.
Now, to give you a better idea of just how dangerous and destructive this storm is and could be, let's take a look at a couple of headlines. USA Today, Hurricane Irma has the potential of affecting every major city in the state of Florida. The New York Post, Hurricane Irma is the size of Texas. The Miami Herald, 2 South Florida nuclear power plants lie in Irma's path. Are they ready? And the Washington Post, U.S. military preparations for Hurricane Irma now include 4 Navy ships and thousands of troops. And the Daily Beast, Hurricane Irma, look at this, is stronger than all of 2017's other 8 Atlantic storms combined.
The county ran out of bags to store all this sand in. Early this morning, they've handed out 20,000 so far.
So here is the way the storm looks in terms of its size. It has been growing. It's been out there for a long time, and it's been very, very intense for a long time, and it's pushing a lot of water with it. So the forecast in the Turks and Caicos was for a storm surge of up to 20 feet, which means that it's like halfway up the ceiling and out of camera range here, and that moving with current too, not just the water coming up. It's rushing in, and then it's going to slowly recede after the storm passes, or if the eye goes over, may rush back the other way, but it's very, very deadly.
And tonight, it's a race to outrun Irma, the most powerful hurricane ever recorded in the Atlantic. The fury of this Category 5 storm was seen in the Caribbean, where at least 10 people were killed when Irma tore through there. Here in Florida, more than 1 million live in mandatory evacuation zones, and folks along the Georgia coast have also been ordered to leave.
More now on the threat to Florida. 180-mile-an-hour winds seriously threaten buildings across Florida, and we've already seen the destruction they've caused in Barbuda and St. Martin. Now, officials and residents closely watching high-rise buildings and construction cranes along the coast. Our chief national correspondent, Tom Yamas, is in Miami. Good morning, Tom.
George, good morning to you. Just behind me, you can see one section of Miami's beautiful glass-filled skyline. Now, that glass is one concern, but the other big concern, take a look at this angle from this same balcony. Those construction cranes there in the distance. There's 20 to 25 of them, and now officials here in Miami are advising anyone who lives in a building next to a crane to get out.
This morning, Hurricane Irma causing a sky-high scare for some in South Florida. In downtown Miami, a combination of condo canyons and massive construction cranes leading to new warnings. Brickell resident Jonathan Ayal wrote out Hurricane Wilma on the 18th floor of his building.
Panes of glass that were probably 40 to 50 sections at a time got sucked out and were floating like paper in the air, and then were just crashed to the ground.
We start off tonight with the most potent Atlantic Ocean hurricane on record, according to the National Hurricane Center. At least 7 people have died so far. Whole islands are ravaged. Hundreds of thousands are without power tonight. And the worst could be yet to come as Irma bears down on the heavily populated U.S. Southeast. We begin tonight with senior correspondent Adam Housley on Key Largo in the direct path right now. Good evening, Adam.
Good evening, Brett. With the Florida Keys bracing for that direct hit, many who've never evacuated here before have packed up and got out.
I couldn't even pack nothing. I have the clothes on my back. That's it.
Time is short before Irma makes its unwelcome advance, with the first stop expecting to be in the Florida Keys. And here, effects could be felt as early as Friday night.
There will be a handful of people that will be staying here. So we'll see what happens. If it gets real bad, then we'll take off.
Mandatory evacuations already in place for the Keys and much of South Florida.
If you're in the Keys and still home, leave and get out. We can't save you after the storm starts.
But not everyone is ready to get out just yet.
We're staying here. We're going to a friend's house. Yeah, gonna ride it out. Hopefully we're okay.
Tens of thousands already heeding the advice, departing by air, boat, and car. Roads north and west jammed with traffic and snaking lines for gas, food, and supplies, leading to reports of shortages and price gouging. Police even escorting fuel supply trucks to critical areas in need of fuel.
We got 4 vehicles and they're all full. So we got that gas for the generators. We got 4 generators. So am I scared? Yeah.
The governor of Florida plans to activate 7,000 National Guard troops, and the president promising the federal response will be swift.
We are very well covered from the standpoint of bravery and talent. We have tremendous people there representing us.
Last-minute preparations are everywhere. Businesses and homes boarded up, and armies of volunteers filling sandbags, especially around Miami, where many forecasts say Irma is targeted.
I have hotel rooms rented in Orlando. I just don't know if I'm going up there or not, but my wife says I am.
Any doubts about this hurricane's power? Just ask residents of the Eastern Caribbean, Hispaniola, and Puerto Rico, where at least 70% of the island is without power, and some areas could remain that way for months.
I'm on 441, which is the Aguada Pico de Piedra Strip. It's really windy. It's actually rocking my car.
Sustained winds of 180 miles per hour producing massive storm surge, severe flooding, and property damage. States of emergencies declared in the Carolinas and Georgia, anticipating the hurricane could trundle up the East Coast.
Sustained winds are 175 miles an hour. Video from the space station shows Irma's size. Hurricane-force winds extend 70 miles from its center. We want to check in with Lonnie Quinn, chief weathercaster at our New York station WCBS. Lonnie, the forecast is changing.
It is. The new information pushes things a little bit more to the west, and we talk about this being an ominous turn. Well, let's get right to it. We haven't actually begun the turn yet, but there's a picture of Irma. It's enormous. You could fit Texas inside of that. The new forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center. Let's display that for you because we're in very much in agreement. It's going to continue this trek to the west-northwest. Here's where it becomes a little iffy, though. This is the iffy part. When does it start this turn to the north? And you got to notice here, between these two yellow lines, anything is at play. So the west coast, the east coast of Florida, both a possibility. Let me show you one model that we tend to look at pretty heavily these days because it's been performing so well. The European, okay? This, the National Hurricane Center's forecast, this right there on the west coast of Florida is where the European model puts the storm. But even they have been waffling because look at where this was earlier today. 12 hours ago, it was an east coast storm with the eye right over Miami Beach.
That's what we're looking at, a very intense hurricane for the area. There's a look at the visible satellite imagery, losing our light of the day, but you can see what they call a stadium effect as the shadows come across the eye itself. A very large geographical tropical system. So again, we'll continue to watch the movement of this system, but this is the official track in 175-mile-per-hour winds. You can see that movement to the northwest, northwest. Friday at 2 p.m. is a Category 5 north of the Dominican Republic. A Category 4 storm Saturday early in the day, and then Saturday in the afternoon with 140-mile-per-hour winds. There you see the shift, slight shift to the west. Probably as a nod to the European computer model. Have not yet read the discussion from the National Hurricane Center, but you could see that probably is what they were thinking at the moment, and then moving that cone of air all the way up into sections of the Carolinas. Now keep in mind, you can see the Tampa Bay area in that cone of air. We've been stressing this over and over again. Look at the white cone, not the center path or where those icons are moving, because this can all change. If this would shift a little farther to the west, that would mean obviously stronger winds for inland counties, especially places like Polk and Highlands County. But you can see overall, the spaghetti models are still trending to the east, and we'll see if that 12Z run from the Euro was an outlier and whether that trend will continue. It's watching the trend. That's why it's good to look at all the computer models at once to see what they're all thinking.
Scary stuff. Governor Rick Scott warning Floridians to get out while they still can't.